some people being let go, there's no way we can expect to have the same kinds of services. The vision of this organization is to see that we retain the services, the great award-winning, best in Michigan, best in class services that we've had for the last 20 years. Obviously, it's not going to happen overnight. Obviously, it's not going to happen soon. And it probably will, very seldom is something free. Not suggesting that it's going to be a tax increase or that's a perception, but when you look at so many people having been laid off and you look at where the budget challenges are and the choices become, and you can't afford the best library and the safest police force or safest city and the best Parks and Rec program and all the other things, but we can't afford it. We don't want to afford it, evidently. The bottom line is that you got to make some choices. And those who can't afford that best in class police force, I want them to volunteer to have it's their garage or their school or their family or their business that's going to get less than the best and the less service that they're getting today from the police force. And one of the reasons that they do well is they have the community organizations. We have Ann Comiskey without her organization, and the police helps fund that, and they work together on that. The Boys and Girls Clubs, where they have funded a social worker to keep kids off the street. That social worker is gone now. Ann's getting a budget cut because the city is struggling. Other organizations, the police going into schools in the preventative area, that's one of the reasons why we have the safest police force. It's not because they're out here in a police state. So I urge you to consider looking at least at the trust organization, Troy Residents Unified, for a strong Troy. Thank you.
Next we'll hear from Alan Huderak. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and councilmen and women who are, I don't envy you in these times. I think sometimes we forget to look at the big picture. I hear people come up here, and I realize they're talking as if Troy is the only city municipality in this situation. We are not. There's an article in the paper this weekend describing how creative leadership teams such as yours, such as citizens who are involved, are going to have to be in the coming years. And I think that's where those of us who have been frustrated with just the anti-tax mentality get completely exercised and unhinged, because we know when we look at the facts, it's going to take that and the cuts that go with it, all the creative energy we can have. You know, I was disappointed when I saw the ICMA report, because, you know, I kind of hoped maybe there'd be something in there, some sort of low-hanging fruit. I was stunned at how at risk our city infrastructure is. You know, I want the library, make no mistake. We all want the library. We all know we want the library. It's the least of our worries when I look at that report. There's some very serious issues going on here, and it's not a tax issue. It's a revenue stream issue. We don't have an expenditure issue. We have a revenue issue. And we need to understand that big picture. I had hoped, too, when Troy Citizens United and Councilman Howerlich were going to bring something forward, that it would be a viable plan. You know what? I planned to eat crow, follow it up with a big old piece of humble pie, and be like, yay, they did it. This doesn't do it. It puts our bond rating at risk if we go there. The retirement savings are already depleted by the other shortfalls that are coming. The numbers aren't adding up. I, too, have joined the organization that Mr. Cowger just mentioned. We need a new voice. Those of you who have stood behind TCU, you know, I get it. But there's something wrong with this picture. We need to find a middle ground together. You're welcome to join us. We're called Trust. We're not minions of City Hall. We're not minions of any party. We're just trying to sort through and be creative with all of you. The resolution on the table tonight, when we look at it as a group, we've already looked at it, it's pretty irresponsible. It's dangerous. We need to be careful that we don't wreck our budget infrastructure. And I think those are the things that it's easy to cherry pick and look on from the sideline, but you know, no one would want somebody else looking on the sideline to manage their home budget or their business. That's what we're doing as citizens, and we're doing it haphazardly. I heard so much misinformation tonight. I'm stunned. Please, let's work together, and let's be civil. Thank you.
Laura Scharkenkamp.
Hello.
Good evening.
Thank you for your service to our community. I respect those who take the tremendous time and effort that it must take to work on these difficult issues, especially in such trying times. I'm not well studied on this issue. I'm one of the citizens who's becoming such. One of the reasons is I have 3 children, and we utilize the library consistently. But it seems to me that one of the primary things that we do as a family, the City Council should continue to do, which is to carefully examine every aspect of the budget. If there are people making $129,000 and $86,000 in benefits, that's shocking. That seems absolutely, completely out of the norm. I know the governor recently put forth a study talking about public employee salaries and benefits. And it seems to me only reasonable in this time that before you consider the closing of the library, that you look at each of these high-paid positions and really consider, is this reasonable? What would be the comparable salary in the private sector? If you're not doing that, if you're not considering the councilman's proposal tonight, clearly, if you're not going through these things, I would consider it just a serious oversight of the consent of the governor, because our salaries across the board in the private sector have been reduced significantly in the last several years. And honestly, if those numbers are accurate, it's really something to look at prior to threatening the citizens with the closure of the library. It's such an important resource, much more even than Parks and Recreation. Although my family moved here about 6 years ago because of the wonderful reputation of the city of Troy, and we appreciate that you've built that and worked through that. But please, please be very careful, very deliberate, and look at this as if this were your family budget and your family future, because we don't have enormous resources to give. I mean, you're going to find that it damages people to the point where if taxes are increased, if there are more and more millages being put forth before there's a serious consideration and information sent to the citizens. For example, I just wanted to say, I think a more specific budget would be wonderful to send out on very plain paper, not glossy, that would detail what decisions you're making. I mean, it wouldn't have to be entirely expensive, to better inform the citizens of exactly what decisions you're making here, and that way we could decide more clearly whether or not you have our consent. At this point, I don't feel that it's been communicated to me that you have looked at all of the budget issues enough to say, let's go ahead and close the library. I don't think it's risen to that level yet. So thank you for listening and for your service.
Thank you. That concludes those that signed up to speak. Council, do you wish to take a break at this point and then go to a response? We'll take a 10-minute break, come back to the table. Council's back in session. We finished public comment, and now the next section of our agenda we'll move forward on. The next item is response or reply to public comment. Council members, do you have items you wish to bring up at this point?
Madam Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
It's just some resources. We heard from a number of residents. I had an opportunity to speak with some who didn't realize a budget is available online on our home website. You can see the complete budget, which is a large document. You can also see the 3-year budget. There was a suggestion by our last speaker that it would be very handy if people could have a non-slick version. We just sent that out in January in the Troy Times. It wasn't a slick, it was black and white. It was the financial summary. So that information is available. I am concerned about one of the speakers who mentioned 2014, the year that Brooks Patterson has called the cliff, with great seriousness. And this too is available. You spoke about OakGov, the Oakland County website, which has a copy of the budget symposium, which took place just in November 2010, and it details the declines in taxable values. The concern in mentioning 2014 as the cliff was that even on a 3-year budget, when this was presented to us, it was encouraged that municipalities begin multi-year budgeting, which we had, that the cumulative loss in revenues through 2013 would be 35%. But beyond it is the concern that Brooks Patterson said in great seriousness at the beginning of the symposium was that 2014 appears to be the cliff. So when Commissioner Potts came tonight and talked about it won't be that bad, it won't be that good either. Because every decline in assessed and real value, every decline year after year is a cumulative loss. And that's what we're facing. And it does show the cumulative loss that began in 2007 and continues to 2025. So that's real. People talked about tonight, where do you get facts? How do you find facts? The facts, I think we're fortunate that we're able to show the transparency both on our own website, and OakGov does an excellent job also showing that. So for people who are interested in details like that, we have them available. For our last speaker who just wants a simple financial summary, we have that outside the clerk's office. That's available in just a little handout form. There was another spokesman who talked about universal metrics. Wouldn't it be handy if we could have universal metrics and compare our departments to like departments? And we too have shown that. We talked about engineering, we've seen planning, we've seen like-to-like, apples to apples, and that was the process that began department by department, where the concern was to continue to do that department by department would be years and years. And that was the reason, in fact, for bringing in the ICMA to take a holistic Gestalt look at where our departments do compare. But we have the metrics, the universal metrics that were requested available, and I believe that's still a PowerPoint that's available to the public, was given at a public meeting. There were a couple suggestions. One about, boy, don't we need a PR firm or someone to talk about what's good in Troy. And although there were people who talked about it, and the following speaker mentioned what's real and what's not and trying to sort that out. And I think we might give some consideration after we adopt our vision and goals, hopefully tonight, into how we can get back to sharing some of the good news and trying to sort out what's real and what's not. Because people who refer to smoke and mirrors and, gee, you look here and there's a number there, there is a lot of confusion, and we need to be as crystal clear as we can on these issues. So thank you.
Anyone else? I just wanted to mention, kind of key off on what Mary said. I brought my budget symposium from the county tonight too, because there were several items that were mentioned by the county, not by us. And for those that want facts and figures and numbers and information from another source that solidifies what we have said, please look at the county information. For example, they are talking about the fact that they have AAA bond rating. We do too. They talk about their 3-year rolling budget. They even have a what do you call those things? We don't have them in Troy. You know, those big posters on the side of the highway, you know, about their rolling budget. We have a 3-year budget. They talk about the benefit change timeline because they changed the benefits from defined benefit to defined contribution. We were the first city to do that way back when. And they talk about the benefits of those changes in the plan and what they have done and what we have done. They talk about pensions, both Michigan pensions and local pensions on page 25 here. And it says, failure to fund pensions by local governments is a trigger that could cause an appointment of an emergency financial manager Act 72. And they also talk about the state shorted in pension benefits from the actuaries' pension recommendations, and that it will be funded by future generations. So there's information that is available to people. The short version of the financial summary was in the Troy Times, but it was a folded over little paper booklet because we no longer send out our calendar that is mailed to everyone, but that paper does go to every home, and there are extra copies here. So there is data and information for people. When we have our discussion of the budget, and by the way, it is a 3-year budget, not a 1-year budget, which encompasses those that want to look at hard copies, not only the 2010-11 budget, but all the way to 12 and 13. And it's those numbers that appear in the budgets later that will tell you the numbers of why we've had to do certain things. So stay tuned about that information, please. Anyone else?
Mayor?
One more thing. I don't know if the city attorney wants to do it or if she wants one of us to do it, but Mr. Kempen mentioned that the lawsuit is over. Judge Langford Morris issued an order just this afternoon. Mrs. Bloom, would you indicate that?
Yes, Your Honor. The Judge Langford Morris did issue a decision. The case is now concluded, and I do have actually copies of the court's order were placed as a late agenda item as soon as I received them today. Copies have also been placed on your tables this evening. And I'm not sure if counsel has other questions. I'd be happy to answer any questions that
Well, do you want to tell the results? So folks that don't know, there were some people in the audience that had facial expressions when he was mentioning it that didn't know the information. So,
in a nutshell, the court found that the petition was not appropriately, it was not a legislative petition, so therefore it is not something that is subject to initiative. So as a result, this matter is now concluded. No action is necessary for counsel to take. However, it could serve as a potential advisory petition for counsel.
thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor?
Okay, Councilman Slater?
That's the issue that I was going to speak of, but just one other point. I think it's important that what jumps out at me is the court finds that this proposed initiative would impair, and they use the word impair, the efficient administration of the municipality and therefore concludes that it is not legislative. And I commend the city attorney for advising us early on of the ramifications of this petition. And had she not initiated this, and we would have gone ahead with this petition, it would have severely impaired this administration. So I commend you for bringing that to us. Job well done. And I think every resident should be thankful. And I think every resident in other cities should be thankful, because if we would have done nothing, it had the potential to become precedent for other cities. So thank you, Lori, for that. And Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Slater?
It would be easy to discuss now budget issues because of what was discussed tonight, but I think that would be better served in our special meeting. So I'm going to pass on some of that and save some time for that, because I think that's an important meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Howard?
I guess in that light, I'll withhold my one or two comments I was going to make as a follow-up that relate to the budget as well. I just wanted to follow up, though, on one thing, and that's the court issue. And it's my understanding that, and it appears to me, and the attorney agree with me, the judge didn't take any particular opinion as to whether or not our library should be open or closed. It was simply on the matter at hand, which was the petition.
Mrs. Bloom?
Mayor, it was never before the judge whether or not the library should be open or closed, and I think that was the whole point of the lawsuit, is that it's City Council that has to make those determinations and those very difficult budget decisions.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't read any more into it than what is there. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I think it is important, and the decision, in fact, cites some law already, that a group of citizens who get together and sign a petition and say, just do this, wouldn't have that kind of influence when there are not resources to just do this. Otherwise, you would see every municipality, and in fact, every local unit of government, with people signing a piece of paper, just do it all for free, or else. And that's what was really at hand here. A just do it doesn't really work when you have to come up with resources to make things happen. And that had been shown in this case and shown in others as well. And that's what that petition was all about.
Well, I suggest to folks who want to read the order from the court, it will be available publicly so that people can read that precisely and know all of the wording that is in there. Next, we have our regular business, the mayor appointments. I move that the mayor of the City of Troy hereby appoints the following persons to serve on the boards and committee as indicated. For the Board of Review for a 3-year regular term, Eileen Nora Turner, for a term expiring January 31st, 2014.
Second.
Moved by the chair, seconded by Councilman Howard, that we approve that reappointment. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
And next we have City Council appointments, Board of Zoning Appeals.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Beltramini.
resolved that the Troy City Council hereby appoints the following persons to serve on the boards and committees as indicated. The Board of Zoning Appeals, appointed to a 3-year term expiring January 31st, 2012, because they are Tom Stratt, Planning Commission Representative, and Phil Sanzica, Planning Commission Alternate Rep, who only serve for 1 year at a time.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Beltramini, seconded by Councilman Fleming, that we appoint Thomas Stratt Planning Commission Rep, and Phil Sanzica, Planning Commission Alternate Rep to the Board of Zoning Appeals for the term expiring January 31st, 2012. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Kerwin,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Howrlack,
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we have City Council nomination. We have an item for the Employee Retirement System trustee,
Madam Mayor,
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin.
I see that William Need has requested reappointment. Therefore, I place his name before us. Resolved that Troy City Council hereby forwards the following nominated person to serve on the boards and committees as indicated to the next regular City Council meeting for action: Employee Retirement System, Board of Trustees, Retiree Health Care Benefit Plan and Trust.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, seconded by Councilman Howrlack. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Howrlack,
Yes.
Kerwin,
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we have the contract extension for auditing services.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Beltrame.
whereas on April 18th, 2005, Troy City Council hereby awarded a 3-year contract with an option to renew for 3 additional years to provide audit services for years 2005, 2006, and 2007 to the Raymond Group of Troy, Michigan, for an estimated annual cost of $63,820. Resolution 2005-04-182. Whereas on December 17, 2007, Troy City Council exercised the option to renew the contract with the Raymond Group for an estimated total cost of $67,568 under the same pricing structure, terms, and conditions as the original contract to expire December 31st, 2010. Resolution 2007-12-366-F4D. Whereas the Raymond Group has agreed to enter into a new 3-year contract under the same terms and conditions at their original bid prices not to exceed $63,820 for the 2011 audit, whereas the Raymond Group has met all expectations during the last 6 audits and their offer constitutes a 7% reduction from 2010 pricing. Whereas staff reductions and retirements will leave only one of the 4 city accountants who were employed June 30th, 2010 in place at June 30th, 2011. And whereas the first 2 and particularly the first year of a new audit firm require a substantial increase of staff time and involvement in completing the annual audit. Therefore, be it resolved that the Troy City Council hereby deems it to be in the city's best interest to hereby approve and extend the new contract to provide 2011 auditing services for the City of Troy from the Raymond Group at an all-inclusive maximum cost of $63,820 with adjustments allowed in years 2012 and 2013 as outlined under the original contract to expire December 31st, 2013.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilwoman McGinnis, that we approve the resolution as printed and read. Discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
At our last meeting, I think Councilmember Beltramini went through carefully and methodically on why this makes sense. And because we did spend time that now, and you as well, excuse me. But I know that Councilmember Beltramini began that discussion and appreciated that insight. So because we've had that, I will be supporting this and don't see need for further discussion on it.
Further discussion? Mrs. Bartholomew, the vote?
Councilmember Slater,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Howrlack,
Yes.
Kerwin,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Motion passes. I-5 is the adoption of the Troy City Council Goals and Vision Statement.
Oh, Madam Mayor,
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
on the vision again, I know it's just kind of a little bit of a, it hasn't been declared. I would encourage council members to adopt, honor the legacy of the past, and build a strong, vibrant future, and become the most attractive, competitive place to live, work, and grow a business. This was a consensus vision we reached a while ago in a workshop, and I would hope that that would work.
That is in the body of the draft, and then we would need a resolution about adopting. There's no resolution as yet on the table. Someone want to move the resolution?
With that correction, I'll move the resolution to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, seconded by Councilwoman Beltramini. Resolved that the Troy City Council hereby adopts the Troy City Council Goals and Vision Statement as presented and directs, with that correction, directs City Administration to develop objectives to facilitate Council's goals for Council's consideration at a future date. Discussion?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard.
Two things. One is, what exactly was that vision statement again?
To honor the legacy of the past and build a strong, vibrant future, and become the most attractive, competitive place to live, work, and grow a business. Period.
Remember that there were suggestions of different wording, and what Councilwoman Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin has done is select the one that she felt best suited what we said, and then the rest of the goals, as they're indicated in the body of it, we were pretty well set on before even the last meeting. Further discussion?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard.
Two things. The last time we talked about this, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I expressed a certain level of discomfort with the absolutes in that vision statement, insofar as it says that we will be the most attractive and competitive place to live, work, and grow a business. A couple of problems that come into play is it's not very. I really do like the first part of that, and I have expressed that before. But it's very difficult for us to be a competitive place to live, work, and grow a business when we have a number of things at our disadvantage. One which is a very uncompetitive taxing structure for businesses, both in the state and in the country, especially when a business can go across the border into Canada and they're striving for a 15% tax rate when we have almost a 40% tax rate here when you combine it with our state tax. We have a closed shop situation when a majority of your workers decide to become union. You suddenly have to negotiate with an entire union as opposed to individual members of your workforce. You don't have that in a number of different states. You don't have an income tax in a number of different states. You have a much more business-friendly environment in a number of different states. You have the most restrictive mining laws in the state of Michigan. We have 2 copper mines in UP trying to come into play. I think it's very difficult for us to make that a realistic statement when you have all of these things coming into play. So I would like to see something that is more relative, uses something along the lines of strives to be. But my bigger concern is the issue that I had when we were discussing this, which is I felt that if we could insert into one of our subsections of a goal something relating to maximizing cost containment and maintaining quality of services, then it puts an emphasis on on doing things more efficiently. And I would appreciate if we could do that and perhaps loosen up the language in that vision, and I would be happy to proceed if we do those 2 things.
Further discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman McGinnis.
I had a concern, I guess, with where we go from here, not in what we've worked really hard to come up with and that's sitting before us to vote it on. Obviously, we had a lot of discussion in our special study sessions, and I think that we've come up with some appropriate goals and an appropriate vision, however we choose to configure the words. But I think that my issue is with the step that we'll take from here, and specifically it relates back to the ICMA study that we just received. And I felt like one of the things that Council got dinged at, per se, was not providing enough specificity to the staff in terms of how we need to achieve our goals and vision. So I know that we're going to be sending this back to staff to come up with some metrics, and I just want to make sure that we're able to have a discussion or provide insight if there's direction that needs to be given beyond what we've already provided in terms of our goals. Because I think that that was something that was requested in the ICMA study, and I think it's something that we should be able to provide specificity if it's needed in terms of coming up with the metrics.
The previous times when Council has done vision and goals, other years, then we send it to staff, and then they come back, as it indicates in the resolution, and develop the objectives to facilitate those goals. And I think when we, excuse me, when we see that all together in a report, I think that will clarify for you at that time. And then if we feel that there's more direction or specificity that needs to be in there, that we should do it. But I think voting on this tonight, getting this in place, then if there's at some point we want to do some adjustment, we can do that. But I think it's important to have this in place. It is much more comprehensive than our previous one that the previous council had, which was only 3 sentences, 4 sentences, 4 goals. And so this is much more definitive. That's my view.
Madam Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I know that some folks tonight spoke about compromise, try to reach some of that. So I offer to my colleague at the end of the table, perhaps a comfort level could be reached with looking at a vision that says to honor the legacy of the past and build a strong, vibrant future and be an attractive place to live, work, and grow a business. Mm-hmm. And that's a nod. Yes. Then for effective and efficient local government, I think for my colleague, the first 2 address that, maybe not to the level that he had considered, but provide effective and efficient local government, demonstrate excellence in community services. It goes to the services, core services piece. Maintain fiscally sound local government. Fiscally sound, sustainable local government as a compromise piece.
Well, and it also has develop and maintain efficiencies with internal and external partners, and conduct city business and engage in public policy formation in a clear and transparent manner. That's all under provide effective and efficient local government. And those were the ones that we agreed to when we had the study session.
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
If I may, Councilwoman Kerwin, I believe you said insert sustainable, fiscally sustainable, was it? That's fine. I think because we had that discussion a few weeks ago, and Mayor, you had asked me if I wanted or felt that we should have a more detailed bullet point, and I know initially I said that it covered it in there, but then I thought about it, and my concern is we really do, even with the ICMA report, you see that we have to do things much differently than we have in the past. So I just wanted to make sure that was emphasized. I think this will be sufficient, and I will be happy. My other thing I do want to address is to kind of key off what's been said here, is how do we intend to use these goals and this particular vision in the future? Because I think that we can all buy into it seems like we're all buying into these goals, but I think our way of actually getting to those goals, our individual pathways that we see the city taking, are perhaps different. And as long as we can appreciate that that's going to happen, there are going to be things that come to this table, and we're going to see the same goal differently in the same item that's before us, but we should be able to appreciate that that's part of the diversity on this council. Is that the way my colleagues interpret this?
Madam Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I think it is helpful to have common language, so we can work from common language. And then as we spend time together and the initiatives come forward from management, as we meet in study sessions, we can look at that and say, well, that's not really what I meant, or as a total, as a group together, we can say, perhaps it should go this way or that way. But I think that in the sense of consensus building, that's an area that we can improve with the adoption of a vision and goals.
I appreciate the addition of the word sustainable in there because that is one that I had talked about when we had the study session, and I think it's appropriate to put that in there. And then the change in the vision to be an attractive instead of the most is a good workable situation. So with those adjustments, is council ready for a vote?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
We should probably have a resolution to amend it to incorporate those changes.
I move. Move to amend, and I'll just read back for the clerk, unless the clerk, do you have the vision? To honor the legacy of the past and build a strong, vibrant future and be an attractive place to live, work, and grow a business, period. And then under provide effective and efficient local government, it would become maintain fiscally sustainable local government.
Someone want a second?
I think Councilmember Howard did.
I will, sure.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, seconded by Councilman Howard, that we amend the text of the vision and goals statement as just stated. And then do we need a vote on the amendment and then a vote on the
Yes.
thing? Okay. On the amendment, the vote?
Mayor Schilling?
Yes?
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Motion passes. And
Madam Mayor?
motion, yes. Councilman Beltramini?
Before we close this out, I go back to Councilmember McGinnis's question and Martin's as well. How do we use these? And I think that we are well served to have consensus language. But one of the things that we were roundly criticized for was not effectively communicating an appropriate level of service, and that is how you use these. So at some point, I mean, we can say, well, we've never done it that way before, but we were told the way we were doing it was not effective. So we need to systemically change how we do this. So I ask again, what is the next step?
Isn't the next step, Mr. Zerlag, the staff is going to develop the objectives, then we're going to take a look at all of this all together?
And at what point do we involve the people in this? That was the other piece of that they criticized us on. And I think before we pat ourselves on the back that we've done this, we need to know, staff needs to know, and the people need to know what the next steps are.
Mr. Zerlag?
I agree that finding next steps with public input would be the way to go, as opposed to having staff identify objectives. I think there was talk with the ICMA group about a number of mechanisms that could be used for public input, and I think talk around the council table was to have a survey of sorts that has about a 97% confidence level.
Madam Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I know we brought, those of us who attended MML brought back the award-winning copy of what goals and vision looks like in a document form. And one thing we will need is a copy of that in document form. It was both shared in every single office. It was publicized in the local paper. It was, as council members attended events, then proclaimed. I think that in fact, falls back on council to do. And if it is the desire of council to have meetings with small groups or large groups, or becoming more organized and finding a process to do that, then I think that would be important. But part of that is to proclaim it. So I think that copies of it would be in order once adopted.
As you know, Mayor, I have issues with a survey being the only way to get public input. A survey is only good as the questions that are asked, and we must be careful that we do not ask to get the answers we want. If you want public input, you want public input. You don't want your answers mouthed back to you. So I am concerned about that. I'm very concerned about it.
And we could use several venues to do.
There are lots of
yes.
mechanisms.
I think the first step is for us to pass this, and then schedule what we want to happen next.
That's a good enough commitment for me. I didn't hear those words out of anybody's mouth until just now.
Okay. All right. Okay, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howrlack?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes. Motion passes. I-6 is the approval of the early
Your Honor,
retirement.
I'm sorry.
Mr.
Just for
Zerling?
clarification. So staff will wait for you to initiate a study item on this matter? No. Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Councilman Kerwin?
I would expect to see copies of what was approved tonight in the hands and in every office and on every board. So, I mean, those are adopted. At this point, those are adopted. So they need to be shared with our staff so that they understand the vision that we're all working toward. And then further steps and the other kinds of citizen involvement we would like. Currently, we have old council goals, which are still on our website. The expectation is they would be replaced with this as well.
We'll be happy to do that. In fact, there are many of these specific goals that we can call best practices or core competencies, which we continue to do now and will do so. I don't want to spend a lot of time going through each one, but most of them are things that we're doing right now, and we'll continue to do that. We'll leave it up to you when you decide to get public input in any venue you wish to see if you should want to calibrate them further.
Madam, just to finish, follow up.
Councilman Kerwin?
We have always seen the council goals come together in the budget, and we're approaching our budgeting workshop. So I would think that these two would then play in that formation, just as you mentioned. Some of them are essential, they are best practices, but references would be made as you go through in the budget to make sure that they are in sync.
Of course.
Next, we have the approval of the early retirement incentive program, classified and exempt employees. We did this early retirement incentive program for the fire staff, the 10 members of the fire staff, and this mirrors that. Someone want to move a resolution for that?
Mayor,
Councilman Slater?
I'll move the resolution as printed.
Do we have a second?
Support.
Moved by Councilman Slater, seconded by Councilwoman Beltramini, that we approve the resolution as printed. Discussion?
Mayor?
Councilman Howrlack?
I just want to follow up on a couple of questions I asked the city manager earlier today. And one is, and maybe I'll redirect some of my questions as well, but the big picture, I would like to see where the big picture is, meaning we are here, you know, where we are today and where it is we intend to go is from a personnel structure for classified and exempt employees, meaning this ERIP intends to get us to what level of personnel and how.
Okay, I'll try to answer the questions as best I can, and if I miss something, you can ask, obviously, another series of questions. But going deductively from general to particulars, and citywide, City Council directed me and my staff to pursue a 10% cost savings from each employee group. And that 10% was not just wages and salaries, it was 10% of wages, salaries, pension costs, FICA, and workers' compensation. As part of a cost savings for the City of Troy, we spoke about having what's called an ERIP program, or an early retirement incentive package. It would only take effect if it would be cost effective or economically beneficial for the City of Troy as an organization. In other words, we're not going to offer this program over a 5-year time horizon if it's going to cost the taxpayers more money than the program is worth. And the way we save is primarily bringing people in at a lesser rate of pay with lesser benefits. Those are the salient reasons for that. And between John Lamorato, Peggy Sears, we also brought in Randy Zubek from Gabriel Roeder Smith and Company, and Randy's an actuary. He can also address any specific questions that you have. So what we're doing is continuing with an ERA program and a 10% savings, as I described, for all employee groups. With the passage of this resolution, we'll have accomplished about 30% of the workforce. In terms of how we're going to look for classified and exempt personnel, that's a function of 2 documents. The first document is our balanced 3-year budget, and there are personnel costs and positions that are slated for layoffs and staff reductions for each year. I don't have in front of me how many people are going to be laid off at this coming June 30th. Perhaps John has that number. The ERA program may accelerate some people that would not be laid off, and their replacements would come in at a lower rate, which would underpin the reason for having the program, again, over a 5-year time horizon where it would save money compared to the cost of incentivizing one person at a time to retire early. The other document that we have is the ICMA document that speaks about essentially flattening the organization. And in the classified and exempt service, I don't recall any specific reference to laying off employees beyond the 3-year budget, but I do recall that report indicating to combine certain departments that would be unsustainable if they were not combined, those being the city clerk's office, the treasurer's office, the purchasing department, and the HR department. They need to all be cross-trained, essentially, to offer a level of service that is close to what we're offering now. And is there something that I missed in my response?
Councilman Howard?
But the other item is we have the actuarial report on this plan, and but what I don't see are the at my end the expected cost savings to say that this plan will, and I know that the intent is for it to at least be cost neutral, but I don't see the numbers.
Well, the resolution indicates that the plan has to be cost neutral. Mm-hmm. And perhaps Mr. Lamorato or Mr. Zubek can explain it further on what it means to have a plan in place that's cost effective for the city. From my perspective, which is simple at times, is that if we're going to enrich someone by a core of people and incentivize them to leave, and it's going to cost the city $200,000, their replacements, if it's going to save $300,000 and they would not leave without the incentive, then the city as an organization had saved money. But as far as who's going to take advantage of it, I don't think we know that yet, because the resolution would be passed essentially tonight. We're then going to have a 45-day window, and we essentially have to make the plan work. It has to work. And John, do you want to add anything to that statement?
Mayor and City Council, Up to this point, we've identified the employees who are eligible for the plan. We've had some informational meetings about the plan, and it's all tied to, of course, council approval before we went any further with it. As we have interest in the plan, we will then review those positions that may take advantage of this program, and we have to make sure that it is at least cost neutral to the city, or we will not be able to go forward with their request. We also are taking an ICMA study into consideration, and also our 3-year budget.
On the response that was provided to me from staff, there's a mention of savings as a percent of base pay only and savings as a percent of base pay and roll-ups. My question is, how encompassing is the word roll-ups? It appears to be about a 20 or so % add-on to the base pay, and I was curious as to what all that included.
You got that, John?
Basically, the roll-ups which we've identified are your wages, pension, FICA, workers' comp. Those all added together with wages is what we're basing our savings on.
Anything else, Councilman Harlech?
No, well, the roll-up is not in. If I understand this correctly, looking at these numbers and looking what I've been provided in budgetary discussions before, the roll-ups is not necessarily the total personnel cost, is it?
No, I think it's what's defined as payroll costs.
Right, but it's only about a 20 or so % increase, which I'm not sure that that's actually enough to cover time off and all of the other personnel costs. I guess I don't see how that really meshes with the metrics that we have been provided in the past.
In the past, the metric that we used primarily was when times were good, it was an increase in pay, and the percentages essentially were based upon someone's base pay. Someone makes $20 an hour and they got a $1 an hour raise, they got a 5% pay increase is the way it was called, and the costs were associated, and the roll-up costs essentially were assumed. As you take concessions, it becomes a little more complicated, and again, the direction that I had from the governing body was an operational definition of what is 10%. Is it merely costs for wages and or salary? Does it include overtime? Does it include the whole list of personnel costs? And what was explained to me and directed to me was that payroll would be the 10% is predicated on base pay, salaries, pensions, FICA, workers' comp. That same operational definition was used to determine the savings for the Fire Service Staff Officers Association. And that same definition has now been extended to the classified and exempt employees.
I guess I do want to have some clarity on that, because we've been provided in the past with a total labor cost of about 165% of base pay, and we also have a chart from your office that shows that the top 20 people in this city, their total personnel costs are about, I think my recollection says it was around 180% of pay. This says that base pay and roll-ups are about 123% of base pay. And I guess what I'd like to know is what exactly is the difference there?
You mean what's causing the difference?
Oh, yes, because there's clearly something that's not included in a definition of base pay and roll-ups. All I want to know is what that is and why it's not included.
All right, what's not included would be overtime costs, it would be hospitalization costs, and probably what I would call liabilities for sick and vacation payout. If someone takes a vacation, they don't get paid for it. If someone gets sick, they don't get paid for it. So again, this was an operational definition that we had, or that I had direction from the governing body to define it in this fashion. I took that as an order, met with all the unions, and am trying to achieve that reduction for all the unions. I'm about 30% there employee-wide.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Slater?
I think you certainly confused me, and I would assume everybody that's watching might be confused too. But I think the important point is, and I'd ask the attorney if I could, some things are discussed in closed session. Direction is given to administration in closed session. And when we come out of closed session and start discussing some of those issues, are we walking in a gray area? Because my only question is the city administration following the direction? And it seems to me that's where we should be speaking. That's the area, not in specifics and trying to change what was discussed in a closed session.
Mrs. Bloom?
The Open Meetings Act does allow for some direction to be given to city administration. And if it is discussed in a closed session, it is inappropriate for anyone to disclose what was discussed in that closed session. So you are correct in that. As far as all of the information, I believe that the request was issued late today. I have not even had a chance to look at all of the detailed information that was provided in response to Councilman Hawrylak, but I know that Mr. Lamorato and Mr. Zerleg are better prepared to address the specifics of the numbers than I am.
Mayor?
Councilman Slater?
If I could just follow up. The important thing to me, and I think to the people, is the city administration following the direction of council. We're responsible for this. And that's really all I care about. So the question I have for staff is, this is the direction we've given to administration in the past. This is the barometer that we've been using for past, present, and future. Is that correct?
That's correct. Not to be redundant, if this passes tonight, we'll have achieved your direction for about a third of the employees, and I am engaged in negotiations with the other two-thirds.
Anything else on this item? Councilman Fleming?
Yeah, I do have some confusion about the roll-up as well, based on what we talked about in closed session. So I don't want to go into that now, but I do have a question in my mind that I'd like to have clarified before I vote on this resolution, because there's a gap that I can't account for that I thought I understood in the closed session that we had, but I don't want to discuss that any further now. But I'd rather get that clarified before I vote in favor of this now. And I may be the only one dealing with that gap issue, but I certainly have it in my mind.
Mayor?
Councilman Slater?
Once again, I've been told that this is what we've done in the past. This is what we directed the city administration to do. I have to take that as true. So I'm going to vote yes on this because this is what we directed the city administration to do. They're doing what we told them to do, past, present, and future. I have to accept that.
Councilman Beltramini?
I wanted to comment on something Mr. Lamorato said, because it spoke volumes to me. In the information we were given, if you tally that up, there's about $5.25 million worth of payroll costs on the table here tonight with this plan. And if all of those people take this early retirement incentive, we will in fact have to replace some of them, but we can replace them at a lower rate, and it will cost us roughly $1 million because the $830,000 is being paid out of departmental funds. So as far as our ongoing costs for this, $1 million versus $525, or a small portion of that, which would be, I would think, less than half. Now, Mr. Lamorato also said, we know that some of these people will have to be replaced. And if they cannot be replaced at a cost neutral to the city, we will not approve their application. And they've all been told that. So this will be cost neutral or better, and in most cases I believe better, to the city. And that is our job, particularly in these times, to save the city money, to accelerate some of these things. We know where we're going. We're going to a depreciation of staff numbers toward the 12-13 budget. That's where we're going. It's not rocket science. I mean, we were all told that. So I'm very comfortable, though, when you said, if it can't be neutral to us for this person doesn't get to take advantage of this program. So that may be bad news to a few people out there, and I'm sorry about that, but my job's for the city, so.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin.
In regards to my colleague's concern about the Open Meeting Act, once the city manager writes a cover letter and it's placed in our packet, it's available on the website. And that cover letter basically delineated the direction that had been given. So, I mean, that wasn't a surprise to anyone who read the material in preparation for this. We were looking for bottom line, and that's exactly what's come before us. And in the explanation, it says exactly what Councilmember Beltramini just said. Either it has to be cost neutral or beneficial, and we're hoping for beneficial for us to go forward with it at all. So that safeguard was always written in there. It is written in the resolution that's before us tonight, and I will be supporting it.
Any more discussion on this item?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard.
Well, I was going to add that I don't really understand where this discussion about closed session is coming into play, because I can't think of a citation in the last 11 years where we've actually would have allowed us to go into closed session to discuss retirement plan, an early retirement plan for non-union employees. I can't find any. So, and if something happened, it certainly is news to me. And that really dovetails into what Councilwoman Kerwin said. This is information that's out there in the public. I still have some concerns, and but I don't want to belabor the point. I do want to get to a question that was submitted to me by a constituent subsequent to the last ERIP that we did for an employee group. And the question to me was, why do a defined contribution to defined benefit conversion if essentially all you're doing is giving them an annuity? Why can't they just do that through the DC plan? That's the question, and I don't have an answer for that person, and I would like to have one.
Generally, the conversion of defined contribution to defined benefit, given which essentially is an annuity, is at a rate of 6.5%, and that rate is determined by our actuaries to be doable in terms of our investments that we make, which is why it can be offered. If that same employee were to call Prudential Life Insurance Company or another financial institution and say, I have X number of dollars, what is my annuity going to be? It's going to be less than 6.5%. That's guaranteed. So by allowing an employee to have an annuity equivalent to the rate of return as determined by our actuaries, which is higher than what insurance companies and other financial institutions will give, that becomes a benefit to that employee to make a conversion and leave, so that his or her replacement would cost the city less money.
Oh, thank you. At least I have an answer. Mike, that's essentially an arbitrage. I'm not sure that's the business you want to get into, but at least there's an answer to my question. Thanks.
And I'm not in that business, but Randy is, and he can stand up and indicate the rate of return.
Okay, thank you. You folks ready for a vote on this? Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Fleming,
No.
Howrlack,
No.
Kerwin,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we go to the consent agenda. Council, you want any items removed at this time? Hearing none, could we have a resolution for all the items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilwoman McGinnis, that we approve all the consent agenda items with this vote.
Mayor,
Councilman Howrlack?
I would like to pull J4A, please.
Except for J4A. The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Howrlack,
Yes.
Kerwin,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Motion passes. Councilman Howrlack, J4A, the standard purchasing resolution award to low bidder LED lighting and retrofits.
Mayor, just a point of clarification. Are all of the funds for these lights paid for through the federal grant?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because I think that, somebody might hone in on that. I just wanted to make sure that folks are aware that this is federal flow through money. Federal flow through money.
Okay. Councilman Howrlack, will you move the resolution then for that item?
I'll vote in favor of it, though.
I will move the item as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilman Fleming, that we approve item J4A at this time. Vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Kerwin,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Howrlack,
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we come to council referrals.
Mayor?
Councilman Howrlack?
Well, I'll move my proposed resolution corrected to get it on the table. My desire would have actually been to have this as part of the second meeting, but I do want to at least get this on the table for discussion. So I'll read it. Whereas the City of Troy has an additional $1.7 million in unallocated fund reserves resulting from the 2009-2010 fiscal year's financial performance. Whereas the City of Troy's employees' retirement system realized an investment gain of $14.7 million for the year ending December 31, 2009, that is being amortized and will save the City of Troy significant contributions going forward. Whereas the City of Troy's employee retirement system realized significant investment gains for the year ending December 31st, 2010, that will be amortized and will save the City of Troy significant contribution requirements going forward. Whereas the City of Troy is aiming for and achieving 10 to 15% labor and benefit cost savings across all employee groups. And whereas the City of Troy has operated a free public library for the benefit of all for over 40 years, and there is a great need in the community for continuation of these services. Therefore, be it resolved that the city manager is hereby directed to draft an amended and revised multi-year budget that incorporates these cost savings and uses these funding sources to provide for and fund the Troy Public Library, and be it further resolved that this amended multi-year budget be brought back to the City Council no later than February 21, 2011.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it to get it on the table for discussion, and understanding the council may want to discuss it at the other meeting.
Moved by Councilman Howrlack, seconded by Councilman Fleming. Discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Beltrame?
I don't want to vote on this until after we've had a healthy discussion. I think that's absolutely imperative. And so I would like to see us postpone this at the very least until after the discussion. I would postpone it until we could discuss, sleep on it, and management could do their thing until the next meeting, but I may not get consensus to do that.
And the other thing we could do is to table it, and then it could be brought back to the table again after we've had a chance to have our discussion. The purpose in setting the special meeting was to have a discussion. So what's council's pleasure?
I'll move to table the resolution.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, seconded by Councilman Slater, that we table this item. The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Mayor?
When there's a tabling motion, Mrs. Bartholomew, is there discussion?
There is discussion if the motion that is being tabled allows for it. There is some concern, though, with the nature of the motion, because the tabling would indicate that you're going to bring it back at this meeting. If you're looking to take it to a future meeting, then you should be postponing this motion. So there is a difficult situation created with this motion.
Well, yes, Councilman Slater?
I seconded the motion to get it on. I don't think it's appropriate to talk about this in this meeting. Once again, I think somebody's put the cart before the horse, and for whatever reason. But I don't want to take any time in this meeting away from talking about it in the other meeting. So if it's better to postpone, I would move to postpone the item.
At this
Can I
point,
do that?
You could do that by making it as an amendment, but when you do make a postponed motion, you do have to have either date or action specific to when you're bringing it back.
But if we table it, it has to come back tonight? Is that what you were saying?
Correct.
Or it dies?
The problem is if you table it, it comes back in the same meeting that it occurs. The meeting that follows this is not the same meeting. It's a special meeting. And because it's a special meeting, to change the agenda of a special meeting requires, it's charter driven, and so it requires a different procedure than a simple motion. So it becomes very difficult to work it through if you would anticipate voting on that this evening. You cannot recess this meeting and go into your special meeting and then reconvene because the meeting is occurring after this meeting. So you're in a quandary. So at this point in time,
I'll withdraw the motion and postpone it, move to postpone until the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, seconded by Councilman Slater, that we postpone this item